When I say violent crime, I really mean it. Chances are, and experienced it myself, they will go to the master bedroom, the wife with the husband tied up next to her. And sometimes that husband has already been stabbed a few times or shot or something. So he's bleeding out, he's dying. They're dragging them in front of the brother, in front of the son, and them in front of them so that they're watching it. There are cases where they will hold the gun to them, force the father to the daughter, or force the brother, the mother, or the daughter.
You're the fixer for Mr. Lord Miles, and if people don't know him, this dude is a mad lad.
It's because there is no control in this country. There's nothing. It is lawless, and that is it at the end of the day. Orania, yes.
This is starting to blow up. The outside version, the clickbait version, what I see a lot of media talking about, but basically it's a separatist, a white movement where there's no crime. They print their own money. Supposedly no colored people are allowed, and it's the most racist thing ever.
And if you want to see white genocide, please come to South Africa and I'll show you that there is, as far as I'm concerned, no incidences of white genocide within reason. So those politicians jumping up and down on stage and encouraging their followers to call it white genocide because they're singing Kill the Boer. And then you've got them on the other spectrum, completely different politicians saying that kill the white man, kill his children and whatever. These are coming from black people.
That's a little extreme.
Saying that is happening.
A politician is wild. I mean, this is some really fucked up shit, okay? Why don't you leave?
What I can say to people now is if you don't get involved, no matter where you are in the world, as a person, a member of your community, if you don't get involved to put things in the path that you want your children and stuff to grow up in, you, my friend, are royally fucked at the end of the day, dude.
Can't make it up. Hey, back in bold Guten Tag, another beautiful day in Deutschland, in Munich. I even got the beer mug from the famous beer hall here. It's finally sunny. Summer's official in Germany. It makes me so happy not doing these dreary German days. But today I got very interesting guests. I want to get into this topic so much because I see so much crap online, especially recently with Mr. Lord Miles, an infamous traveler down in South Africa. And I think I'm with his dude, his guy that's helping him out down there, showing him the way, making sure he's staying safe. But the South Africa topic is fascinating to me because on one end, I grew up in the USA, in the education system. You know, we focus on American stuff. We don't quite care about the rest of the world. But the topic about South Africa and Nelson Mandela was very one-sided. Basically, okay, apartheid, bad, Mandela is the saint. You know, everything's roses and dandelions now. But as we've seen, you know, recently, I mean, we have on the far right, they're saying there's a white genocide. The country is totally collapsed. You know, I keep hearing about Cape Town being a digital nomad haven. So I'm getting all this mixed information. And luckily, I came across Mr. Anonymous, where we have to blur his face, but the K9 Reaper on Twitter. And he was very friendly, and he's going to give me the real breakdown, hopefully not one-sided. And I appreciate getting to know you and coming on the podcast, my friend.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here, dude. Thank you for the invite and the brief join me discussion. So yeah, I look forward to it.
First and foremost, so why are we blurring your face? Is it that scary down there that you don't want to be doxxed like you told me, or what's going on?
Well, at the moment, because of sort of a few things that we're busy with regards to community safety and a bunch of other things, it's not. Look, it's not really a major requirement. It's just for now, for as long as humanly possible, I would like it to remain anonymous. I'm fully aware. I mean, look, a lot of people out there know who I am. They know who I am on Twitter, or X, whatever people want to call it. And I mean, my face is on YouTube somewhere. But for now, I would like to try and stay anonymous for as long as possible to those who don't know me. It won't last forever. I'm fully aware. I haven't put any real effort into trying to hide my identity. There's a lot of info that I've posted in the past that you know, those in the know get the one or two together and figure things out. But yeah, for now, until one day I get doxxed, eventually.
Okay, so it's not like if your face is out there, the government comes after you, you got hit squads coming at you. It's just a personal thing, correct?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. On that note, you kind of need a working government for them to come after you, just as an FYI, one that we don't have, so I'm not worried about that.
Well, speaking about that, you just retweeted or quoted one of my tweets from Numbeo, which is actually a decent travel website to get not only crime statistics, but cost of living, a lot of user input, but they also try to get statistics from government websites and whatnot. And for the most part, it's been legit throughout my travels, which I've been around the world, this website. And I was talking about how now Albuquerque and freaking New Mexico is more dangerous than Cali, Colombia. I was in Cali, Colombia earlier this year, had a blast, only one
Oh yeah,
emergency room visit. But
yeah,
the fact that a country as prosperous as the United States, with how much wealth we have, I mean, I was in Albuquerque about 7 years ago. It was totally fine. That's more dangerous now. I mean, it blew my mind. But anyways, you quoted the tweet and you're like, "Hey, are the top 5 cities?" And these are non-war torn cities. Okay, these are countries that are not in war, basically. 5 of them, or 4 out of 5, was it? Were from South Africa, right?
yeah. So South Africa made spot number two, three, and four. So it was Pretoria, Durban, and Johannesburg, which are three of our sort of biggish metropolitan centers.
I mean, when that comes to your mind, I assume a native-born South African. What are you feeling with this? Is this normal, or is this? I mean, kind of dive into that picture you saw.
Honest answer, I think. Look, I think on my end particularly, I can't speak for all South Africans, but for someone who works or volunteers primarily in community safety and other things, for me, what you see on the street, that's not surprising at all. You take a look at it, and it's like, oh look, it's another Friday. I mean, right now it's what 10 past 2 on a Friday afternoon, the 28th, and I look at it and it's like, okay, it's a Friday, and you just continue with your life. I don't want to say that we're becoming hardened to violent crime and things like that, but it is the expectancy at the end of the day. I mean, if you see what our houses look like, for example, the amount of fortification that goes into building a home here, just as an example, once you see that, it sort of makes sense. You look at that and you think to yourself, "Holy shit!" I mean, they're building to keep people out with different layers, and then they're trying to keep themselves in once again to keep people out. So, yeah, I look at it, and for me, it's like, well, I just yeah, you continue on. You don't have a choice, eh? That's just how it is. You can read the stats, and it'll tell you that okay, everyone's dying, and everyone's getting robbed, and everyone's getting raped and murdered, and the whole 9 yards. And well, we sort of continue doing what we're doing as civilians in order to try and slow that down as best we can. So the longer I linger on stats and things like that, um, it becomes a dark hole, if it makes sense. It's like you don't really want to look at things like that. But we know it exists. We know how bad it is. Um, and we know sure as shit that as civilians, we are literally the front line and the last hope when it comes to stopping that.
Yeah, the only, the government ain't gonna do shit. It reminds me so much, and I can't wait to see it for myself, South Africa, but Brazil. So I've spent over a year of my life in different parts of Brazil, another year and a half in other parts in Latin America, and it blows my mind when you're going through some of these neighborhoods and the huge walls and the electrocution fences and the little glass pieces that are cut up. If you're not have as much money, you put them on top of the wall. So
Yeah,
you
yeah, they
cut your
break
hand,
glass bottles.
yeah, and
Yeah.
my whole like little juxtaposition with it was wow, Latinos and the Brazilians especially have this beautiful vibe, and you can be best friends with the stranger on the streets, and you think you're in a paradise, yet their homes are covered in all that stuff. Compared to say in the Slavic lands, I lived in Poland for a while. There's You can't smile on the street. You're not supposed to talk to strangers. Everyone looks like they're sad and angry, yet their homes are always open. They don't lock their doors. Like there's
Oh
no
yeah.
crime whatsoever, and the cultures I get really fascinated with how it works. But let me ask you this. So first of all, you're doing what exactly in South Africa? You're part of protecting people, and then kind of lean into like how the hell has this happened? I mean, does this happen over the course of your whole life, or is it just recently? And you said you don't want to get into like a doomsday mindset, but I saw your Twitter. You're documenting the collapse of South Africa. Just tell me more about this background here and how your country has gotten to this point.
That is a very, very, very long conversation of which many people will give you varying degrees of answers. But my perspective on it at the end of the day is pretty much the same as everyone's, just sort of to the point without, how would I put it, going. diving deep into different policies and government laws and rules and blah blah blah. But essentially, long story short, there is no government control. There's no government oversight. There's no input whatsoever from them with regards to assisting and trying to essentially fix things at the end of the day. So you ignore a problem long enough, you engage in corruption long enough, etc., things start to snowball, and over time it just gets worse and worse and worse and worse. So crime, it hasn't. It's not like something we've woken up to overnight and realized, oh shit, things are bad. It's been ongoing since forever, since even before apartheid ended and blah blah blah. Because the common thing is, how would I put this? The common thing is, oh, since '94 things have just gotten bad, but it was worse, not worse, but it was bad before that as well. If we were going to be honest with each other here, it's just that over time, the spectrum just obviously it's a gradient that essentially goes up. I mean, for example, I watched a documentary the other day. I don't know how I came across it, but it was to do with copper cable theft in South Africa. And that is something I actually, of all things, specialize in, is combating copper cable theft and what comes with that. And they showed how in 2000, the year 2000, they were stealing the old telecom cable. So the telecom cable was South Africa's main telecommunication provider essentially at that time, and it was all those copper wires that your landline phones communicate through. And they were showing how back then the guys were stealing like a kilometer, 2 kilometer worth every single night in different varying areas. And I mean, I look at that and I saw all these like copper lines running over the different poles from town to town, and that was the communication lines. And I looked at that and I go, it's like something I've never seen before, really, because those lines no longer exist now. Not because the government took them down, but because they got stolen so much, they were forced to no longer repair, replace, and to maintain. So eventually, essentially, they gave up on thousands and thousands and thousands of kilometers worth of overhead copper lines that were running the landline system for you. Pick up your old phone, you phone someone, and blah blah blah. Um, and I look at that now, and I think back to that documentary, and the one guy said something there. I'll never forget it. True as God, I'll never forget it. He's standing over this hole that was dug in the ground to access the hub. There's the hub, and then the lines come out of the hub, and then they go above ground, and then the lines go from pole to pole to infinity. And these guys had dug up the hub, and that cable, right, is as thick as like a man's leg. And they'd cut through the cable, destroyed all the lines inside it just to get a few kilos worth of copper cable at that time. And the guy looked at it and said to the reporter, if you see what it looks like now, give it 20 years, give it 15 years, whatever he said. It was longer than 10 years. We'll call it 15. Give it 15 years. And he says, we won't be having this conversation because this infrastructure will no longer exist. And sure as God, we don't have landline communication in South Africa anymore, not the traditional version. There's no more overhead copper landlines anymore that are in any serious use anymore. The landlines are all wireless now. And they carry their little landline phone around the house because it essentially operates off of a SIM card that's inside of it. Um, and I look at that and I think to myself, if I follow the trend of copper cable theft over the last 10 years alone, since I've been really, really active in that industry, and I compare what I'm seeing to what that guy saw, I am fucking terrified, to be honest with you. Because I can tell you now, and you asked, things got worse over time and blah, blah, blah. If I'm looking at it now, right now, I'm telling you, in 5 years' time, if you and I have this conversation, oh boy, in 5 years' time, if you and I ever get in touch again and we have this conversation about this again, there is going to be there will not be any copper cable left to steal in a lot of areas. And those communities in those areas, they've got a choice to make, and they're going to have to make that choice tonight, literally, because they are running out of time. They're going to have to get involved themselves, like what we're doing on our level, to stop copper cable theft. And we could dive more into it when you want to. I don't want to hijack your conversation because, yeah, as I say, it's a long, deep, convoluted thing to get into. But essentially, yeah, that guy said they're not going to have that conversation in 10, 15 years time because the infrastructure won't be there. True as God, if I can find, because I sort of recognize that area uh, on that video, and I think I can find that hub. I actually, next month, I want to go down there and record a video next to that hub and find that dude and send it to him because he wasn't wrong. That infrastructure is dead. And it's not, as I say, because the government turned it off to upgrade or anything. It's because the locals stole so much of it that they couldn't maintain it. They couldn't keep it running. Every now and then, for example, you'll drive down the road and there's these blue little boxes on the side of the road that was used for the old ADSL lines and things like that. They've all been stripped out completely. It's just like shells lying there, etc. So, in terms of like you asked where it's going and why, how did things start getting so bad and blah blah blah, mate. Honestly, I'm not going to give you the usual because everyone's got their answer of the government did this and that and blah blah blah. But I can tell you, honest to God, it's because there is no control in this country. There's nothing. It is lawless, um, and that is it. At the end of the day,
Fascinating. Yeah. So, I mean, basically, I don't know, was it analogy, a simile, the copper infrastructure for the whole of the country, kind of where it's going. And that guy said it'd be crazy in 15 years. And you think it's more crazy. And now what is even going to happen, later on? So I have a lot of topics to go off this point. But again, it brings me back to Brazil. It reminds me of a bureaucratic class that completely separates itself from everyone else, has
right?
the most cushy jobs in the world. They let a lot of the favela types, they give them just enough to survive, but they want
Yeah,
them to put the rest of the middle class, which is a majority of Brazil who is working their ass off and barely getting by, but not favela level, right? So they're always on like,
right.
okay, I just got to keep working, otherwise I'm going to end up in the dirt. Like they're always scared because the government class puts that in their head that, oh, you'll be in the favela if you don't like this $600 a month job, right? And it's fascinating seeing different governments and especially ones that partake in the socialist type programs, the commie type programs, and this is what I found fascinating about my research. And I don't like really discussing a country unless I've been there, but with Mandela, I mean, he was a communist, wasn't he? And his party's loaded with a bunch of crooks. What is the history of this ANC and so forth? Am I wrong? Because you shook your head like, is he your hero still or what?
No, 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 no. So I wasn't shaking my head. Sorry, I glanced at something and I looked back. I'll be honest with you, I'm not so jacked up on politics as what some are. There were a bunch of other guys I can point you in the direction of for that. But as a whole, some people will tell you it was more communist, socialism, whatever they want to call it, two different things, but they sort of mix with this bloody group. But look, people must understand that in order to win at that time, the ANC took drastic measures, and you're talking the 60s, 70s, 80s, very, very early 90s, where they formed what they call Umkhonto weSizwe, which was the spear of the nation. That's what it loosely figures out to be. And they went very militarized very quickly at that time, and they were targeting civilians, uh, infrastructure such as electricity pylons. They tried to hit a few gas installations, petrol installations, and things like that. Some stuff they were successful, other things not so much. And then during that time, they also killed off their own political rivals. A lot of people talk about the ANC and how they fought for freedom for their people, which they did. I mean, let's give that to them. They did. No one. I'm not saying that they didn't, but what people don't then discuss is how many innocent lives were essentially lost during that period. And I mean, they hit a lot of civilians. They started with their farm attacks back then already when they were laying landmines and attacking isolated farms with guys that had Soviet era weaponry, AKs, and the smaller platform, they're called Scorpions, whatever they call them now. So the ANC essentially at that period were forced to sort of step up their game in terms of their fight for freedom, if you want to call it that. And they started hitting anything from, as I say, bars. There was one or two like military installations they attempted. There were a few police stations. They ambushed a lot of police, civilians. They were attacking random houses, farms, as I say, and the other side of that coin is their political aspirations, where they realized, well, once we win this fight, um, what are we going to do next? Because they've still got political rivals who were quite strong at that time. So they start whacking political rivals. Part of the aspect on that is understanding, well, at that time they essentially just they felt they had absolutely no choice. So that mindset, by the way, is still active today. A lot of, for example, the cash and transit heists that you see in South Africa, where they hit those armored vans with money, a lot of those cash and transit heists, if you take a look at them, the weaponry that they're using, sometimes you can see a rifle in there, especially the older AK platforms. You look at that AK and you're like, I'm pretty sure they dug that up from an old arms cache that they had lying around. Because a lot of people forget we still have shitloads of arms caches that they had buried during that time to use. Um, but yeah, look, Mandela's not my hero. Within a certain degree, he did take actions that he probably felt were necessary at the time to achieve his goal. But a lot of civilians and innocent lives were lost uh, as a result of those actions and the policies and the groups and military or militant activities that they were undertaking at the time. So yeah, he's definitely not my hero. I'm glad for what he did and whatever he decided to do with his life and blah blah blah. But yeah, the I suppose we can't weigh the two sides up against each other, to be honest. But regarding his actions alone, in order to get there, no, definitely not my hero. That's for sure.
Yeah, the cliche one man's freedom fighter, one man's terrorist. It seems like there's a lot of nuance in that conversation, no doubt.
Yeah,
So let me ask you this. You said you're not really into the politics, but I'm really curious on this. If you don't know, we're going to move on. But what was the USA's role in this? I assume they were funding someone because, I mean, at that time it was the Cold War, wasn't it? Or right after it, and they were, hands everywhere. But why the
yeah.
communists? Because I read a lot that there's a lot of I mean, Mandela, like they confirmed that when he was young, he was in the Communist Party. So why are they funding them against the apartheid regime? Were they not playing ball with the USA? Like, because in my history books, the apartheid was the worst thing in the world. It was worse than the Holocaust, or on the same level as this and the Confederates. But then we were supporting communism. So, like, tell me, where's the USA fit in on this for my American ego?
Another deep story to dive into, but I'm aware, for example, the United States supported the SNDF during the Bush War in Angola. It was like the 80s where um, certain policyholders or whatever, however it works that side, were supporting the SNDF during that time frame. But then on the other side of the coin, if I can recall, I think it was 1986, if I recall. Yeah, I think it was 1986. Reagan enforced his constructive engagement, blah, blah, blah. And they had a sanctions imposed on South Africa, and that was in 1986. Yeah, I think so. So you had some of your policymakers that side of the world supporting the apartheid regime, especially the SNDF with their actions in Angola, because they were essentially fighting socialism and communism then already. And then you had the other side of the coin where they were sanctioning the living hell out of us. And, I believe it was 1986,
What was the
if I can
reason
recall.
besides the apartheid? There had to have been something more deeper to it, no? Conspiracy brain?
Yeah, I think if you go down this conspiracy road, I mean, there was probably one or two extra things that they were focusing on at the time, but that's something I would have to honestly do my research on. I'm more security focused and things like I know that they say you're not into politics, but politics is into you and blah blah blah. But I'm more on the security side of things, and I don't really. If I go down that road, I'm going to make a complete mess of it, and I'm going to have people swarming
No worries.
my DMs saying that I'm an idiot.
No worries. No worries. I respect it. Okay. So yeah, the how I came across you, and it sounds like you just blew up big time. You're taken care of. I think you're the fixer for Mr. Lord Miles, and if people don't know him, this dude is a mad lad. What is he? A British bloke that's done some of the craziest traveling in modern history, and so he's kind of documented down there. And I know you guys are, hanging out and you're showing him the rope. So I really want to dive into. So what is it like for the foreigner coming down there right now? Because I've seen his point of view, his tweets. I kind of heard some of yours, but I mean, do I got need a gun on
Yeah.
me if I'm coming down there? If I stay in the nice neighborhood of Cape Town, I won't have any worry. Kind of go into the day-to-day life of a foreigner right now in South Africa.
Look, he
Yeah, and how'd
he
you
hit
get in
me
with
up
him?
and
I got to hear this.
yeah, he hit me up. I think he's been wanting to come to South Africa for quite a while. And all we did, or all I did, was show him around with regards to community safety and violent crime and what we're doing to combat that. I know that he's had several other thoughts that he's been openly posting about, and that's his thing. If that's what he wants to do, that's his thing. But it was quite the eye opener for him. I hope that he feels like he got the content that he was looking for. There was a lot more that was meant to be done, but due to other reasons, unfortunately, we couldn't show him everything that was planned due to a few things that unfortunately happened here and there. But that's no biggie. I know for him it was quite the eye opener. We took him down to Orania to show him what it's
Yeah, I
like in
want to talk
that
about
that
that. Don't bring
little
that up yet. I want to talk about that later.
cool. We showed him that little town, and when we got back up to Joburg, he got a taste of a shooting range and got the opportunity to shoot firearms that not even the average South African public can own, never mind shoot. And then we took him on the wild tour essentially and showed him just how rough things really are, considering that the other plans unfortunately weren't going to pull through. But yeah, I think for a foreigner coming to South Africa, I don't want to scare people away. Let's make that clear. I don't want people to look at South Africa and go, "Well, I'm not going to come there. I'm not going to invest there," and blah blah blah. South Africa is a country like anywhere else in the world. Every country's got its do's and don'ts, and look out for this and blah blah blah. With that being said, it's important to note that yes, South Africa is very violent. It's very violent. It's very dangerous. Um, and that's just how it is. Us as South Africans, we've learned to live with it. Some of us have learned to adapt around it and to put the necessary plans into play in order to not become a statistic. But the average tourist would never think that far. So to the average tourist, I mean, for me, it's a thing of, you know what, guys, if it looks dodgy, don't do it. If someone's trying to help you at an ATM, don't let them help you. And please, for God's sakes, don't come here with your fancy Rolex watches and things like that, because you will, chances are, you probably will have someone follow you, and they will take that off of you. And it's up to you how that situation goes down, because they could walk up to you and just shoot you straight away and take it off of you, and off they go. And that's in
Okay,
broad
so
daylight in traffic.
it's not just petty crime because a lot of dangerous places. Again, go back to Latin America. You're not going to get killed, okay? But you'll probably get robbed. You might get drugged, but usually you're not going to die. So, but you're telling me in South Africa, if the foreigner's not smart, he could be dead.
So the average South African citizen has to run the gambit essentially every 24 hours. Every 24 hours, you wake up, the cycle starts again. Whether they want to acknowledge it or not, the cycle starts again. So in South Africa, when I say violent crime, I really mean it, because they could break into your house and they don't go straight to your TV or whatever. They go to the bedroom to find where you are, where the listener in this on the show is sleeping with their wife, girlfriend, whatever next to them, and your kids in the room across from yours or whatever. They come straight to the main bedroom because they want you. So when they get you, chances are, I'm not going to say that this happens at every single scene, but it happens often enough that I can speak about it openly, and experienced it myself in terms of scenes that we've responded to, where they will go to the master bedroom, um, find where the male is sleeping on the bed, walk up to him. They'll just put the gun to his chest and pull the trigger. Sometimes they'll wake them up, then tie them up, and more often than not, I don't know how deep you want to how much details you want here, but I think the listener deserves to
I've
hear.
heard these stories, but yeah, keep going. Yeah, it's nuts.
Okay. So I don't know how PG rated this is, but we'll continue till you tell me to stop. Yeah, okay. So essentially, what happens more often than not, and again, I'm not saying this is every single scene, but it happens enough that I can talk about it. Um, the wife is raped with the husband tied up next to her, and sometimes that husband has been already been stabbed a few times or shot or something. So he's bleeding out, he's dying. He watches the wife getting raped. When they're done with the wife, they often go for round two. So they rape the wife a second time. Sometimes they will sorry, I'm trying to multitask. We are uh, with the copper cable operation that's ongoing somewhere. So sometimes they will then rape the daughter as well. And remember, this isn't like they're going into the room and doing it in secrecy. They're dragging them in front of the husband, in front of the brother, in front of the son, and raping them in front of them so that they're watching it. There are cases where they will hold the gun to them and force the father to rape the daughter, or force the brother to rape the mother or the daughter, and everyone has to sit and watch. You see that this happens a lot, for example, in farm attacks in South Africa, where the level of brutality is insane. And then when they leave, they'll take a few cell phones, maybe some cash, maybe the TV or something. So
Whoa, whoa, whoa,
the
time out, time
average,
out, time out, time out. So they didn't even take that much. They just wanted to go in there for that sick revenge, something. I mean, satanic ritual or what? And
when I said
this happens. This
earlier,
is not just like a one-off story. You
no,
responded to
no,
this.
this is we'll dive into it. We'll go a bit deeper now if you want. So it's definitely not a once-off thing. Okay, so I have personally responded to scenes myself where you can follow the blood trail and you can see where they stabbed the father. The father then slips in his own blood because there's so much of it pooling on the floor. He slips in his own blood. He can't get up because you're losing your life force essentially. And the daughter's been raped in the next room. You find her tied up in it's like on the bed. She's passed out or something. The mother's been raped and then throat slit, things like that. Um, and then maybe the TV's missing or laptop is missing, cell phone taken, maybe the wallets, etc. And you find like parts of the wallet up the road because as they're running away, they're dumping what they don't need because they've taken the cash out and whatever. Um, in some of these attacks, the value that they're getting from it is next to nothing. It's like I mean, I know of a scene where they shot the father, stabbed the mother trying to keep the father alive by trying to plug holes with shirts and socks. And they took 50 Rand out of the wallet and jumped to the window. So 50 Rand is, what is that in like dollars? It's like $2, $3, not even. So that's the level of violence that we're living with in South Africa. When I said earlier that it's lawless, it encompasses the entire spectrum of that. I'm not saying that, these are, how would you put it, like, they're not doing these because it's rituals and things like that. They're just doing it essentially because they can. And that is something you got to keep in the back of your mind. That when every South African goes to bed at night, they don't know if it's going to be their turn next or not. So you take the relevant steps, some of us do, not everyone, in order to ensure that you're not a statistic.
Okay, so again, though, they're not doing this necessarily to survive. They're not taking food out of the fridge. They took $2 and they just did all this nasty stuff because they can, not to survive.
I mean, even hijackings now, for example, hijackings are at a point where before they would try and get you out of the car. They would try and pull you out of the vehicle in order to acquire that vehicle. Now they walk up to the vehicle, they just open fire on you immediately, and they pull your body out of the car, and then they take the vehicle. Another aspect of vehicles is in South Africa, if you have an accident, if your car crashes, chances are, I'm not saying all the time, but chances are you're going to get robbed. And if you're dying, the last thing you're going to see is a guy going through your pockets, taking your shoes, your belt. They've taken pants off of the dying before. God, I'll never forget. I arrived on this one scene. The accident had just happened, and as we arrived on scene to assist, guys ran off into the field next to it, and they had already started stripping and looting the victims. They were trying to get the tires off of the car. They'd already taken the battery. I mean, there were people that were dead, and one that was barely alive. They had started taking their shoes. The wallets were missing. All the cell phones were gone. So forth. And this was in daylight. There's a famous picture somewhere. I must find it and tag you in it. There's a car on its roof in the middle of a city center. And within 5 minutes, guys rocked up, took the tires, took the battery, and disappeared. So in South Africa, yeah, it's lawless, man. I must actually get that tag made for my plate carrier that says lawless. I'm just going to stick it on the back of the damn thing because that's what it is.
Okay, so then now here's the big question. So, I mean, this is very extreme. I mean, maybe okay, the cartels, but it's more about business, right? This sounds just some really fucked up shit. Okay, why don't you leave? Okay, and if you're not leaving, what? Yeah, yeah, how can you not leave? I mean, this is insane to put yourself
Yeah,
through this, especially now you have a social presence. I assume you can make money online. I get the idea to fight for your country because the Americans, people like me get told this all the time. Oh, just stay and fight and end up in a prison cell like the January Sixers and do all that. But like, no, I'm
right,
gonna live a good life. Like my ancestors, they left Europe and they went to the USA to create something they did. So I can do that same ideal wherever I want, right? I want the best for my country, no question. But
right.
the only thing I see is either you leave or you start shooting people and you start shooting a lot of people and cleaning the streets. So I don't know how you're sitting in this middle and playing, you're doing your work and you're protecting. You still haven't told me exactly what you do. But why don't you guys just start killing people? I mean, this is ridiculous. It's insane to me that this is allowed to happen.
Look, oh boy, we don't have to kill anyone because South Africa records about 80 murders every 24 hours, 80. 80 murders every 24 hours, and that is only what's reported to your police stations. I reckon that number must be much, much higher if I take a look at the data that I have access to because of the various operational groups that I'm a part of. That number of murders on a every 24-hour basis must be higher. Must be higher. It's got to be around 120 every 24 hours easily. To answer your question, yeah. So I mean, essentially, they're killing each other. We don't have to really do any of that. But to answer your question, why I'm not leaving, I can't actually answer that. I know on Twitter I say that I love my country and I'm not going anywhere, and I do. I really do. And there's a lot of people that say to me, "Oh yeah, but if K9 was offered a job in the US, he would be on the first plane out of here." Well, guys, I've actually had quite a few offers, and I've respectfully turned them down. So for me, I like South Africa. I like the weather. I like the people. I like how things are done, and I understand. How would I put this? I understand how things work here. So you mentioned the favelas earlier. Imagine if I were to go and move to the favelas. I wouldn't understand jack shit about that area, and I probably wouldn't last a day. But in South Africa, I can go into the most dangerous parts of this country, and I will be perfectly fine because I know how things work. I know how the bad guy operates, and I know what to do in order to not become a statistic. Um, so yeah, I'm not
I know it
going
sounds a little
anywhere.
Stockholm syndrome-ish. I mean, why would I want to
It
live
does.
24/7?
Yeah, yeah, it
That
does.
you said it before. You're on the roller coaster again each 24 hours, and um, but okay, tell me exactly what you do. Cable copper protection type of dude, and I mean, you're risking your life day in day out. No.
So on the community safety volunteer non-paid side, it is essentially just a community safety volunteer with various organizations. And some of the things that I specialize in is copper cable theft and how that works and operates. And then the more violent sides of criminal activity, if you want to call it that. So that's what we do. Yes, we are putting our lives on the line to do this. We don't do it intentionally. I don't want people to look at it and firstly, I don't want people to look at it and say Canaan's trying to make himself out to be a hero because I'm not. To be clear, I'm not alone in this. I try and tell various content creators all the time when we have these chats that I'm not alone in this. I want it clear. Uh, I'm one of many that are involved in community safety that are not getting paid, and we're putting in the time and effort to try and secure our communities. I'm just blessed to have, like you said earlier, a platform where I can speak about it and get the attention that we're trying to get to show people what's going on.
Yeah, you're doing a great job on that. So wait, you're not getting paid for this? How are you making money?
I do a few things here and there,
Okay, but
a
you're
few
mainly
things.
okay. Okay, but you're the community. So this is an interesting point though, and this is what I alluded to at the start about Albuquerque being more dangerous than Cali, Colombia. Everyone's seen Narcos,
Right,
right? Season 3. You know
right.
what Cali,
I
Colombia is like.
loved that series. Narcos was fantastic. I loved it.
Yeah, but now we have 4 USA cities that are more dangerous than Cali, Colombia. And I was just there, okay? And it's not like it was after the cartel got broken up, because actually, when the Cali cartel was together, that place was kept on a tight lid, until they started doing the feuds and the government and so forth. But
Right.
it's still dangerous, very, very dangerous. And I'm asking you now, for the United States people that are going to stay, because either they're too scared to go to the favela down south or make a life, and they think everywhere else in the world is more dangerous than USA, which is delusional. How can they do these type of things? Where I think they should do neighborhood militias. If the government's not going to step up, the police are stripped and put their hands behind their back. What is the best course of action to start our own little militias to keep USA the streets cleaned?
So we're not militias. We're community safety initiatives. And obviously we're all volunteers. Now I try and tell the Americans they always need to be careful how they set theirs up because they will be seen as militias, and that's not what they want because then you start looking a bit dodgy and the government starts paying more attention and etc. What we have going here in South Africa, in my eyes, everyone's got their own perspective on it, their own views, but in my opinion, um, we're very unique in that regard because we have a requirement for it. We have a need for community safety initiatives because of the lack of law enforcement, no visible policing, every man, woman, and child for themselves, essentially. So we have a need, a requirement for civilians to step up and do their part in order to secure their communities. If I look at America right now, I don't think they've yet gotten to that point where their institutions have collapsed or declined enough that they have to step up and come out of their houses and patrol from 8 p.m. till 6 a.m. The next morning.
They started
So they
during
don't.
the Black Lives Matter thing. We started seeing it a lot.
And now remember, those are in secluded areas, though. That's not a nationwide thing, and that's a requirement because the shit's hitting the fan there. So until they get to a point where they make a call and they're not getting police, fire, ambulance out within a reasonable amount of time, then they will start understanding, well, shit, guys, we're going to have to do this ourselves. And that is what we are doing as community safety volunteers at the end of the day.
So how
Um,
long has these programs kind of been going?
many years. They started way back in the 90s, the 80s, whatever, when it was still the old commando system. That was especially to do with the farmers and the farm watch, Plaswag, the farm watch system. They then banned the commando system or changed it to something else. But the idea of community safety as a whole in South Africa, I think, has been a thing since, if I may be honest, since the day the first voortrekkers arrived in this country hundreds of years ago, because they were having to look after themselves, secure their own areas. Hundreds of years later, we're still doing that. We're still, I mean, I'll be damn honest with you. I see South Africa as the final frontier because that's what we really are. I know right now, if I phone the police on my phone, they're not going to come. There's not a chance in hell someone's going to rock up my door within a reasonable amount of time and, come to my aid. They're not going to be here. It'll take them hours, days. And that's if my call even goes through to the call center. Most calls to South Africa's police service are dropped in this country. They don't even make it to the bloody call center. So requirement at the end of the day.
Now, does the government actually promote this, or they actively try to like shut it down? Like you told me, if we start calling it militias in the USA, we're gonna have some agents sneak in there. The government lets you guys be. I thought they wanted chaos so they could make you all live in fear.
Government doesn't care. We're left alone. We've got no oversight. We've got no control. There is next to nothing in South Africa, mate. You can do whatever you want. Really, you can come here and you can do whatever you want, and as long as no one rats you out to someone, the government will essentially never find out. So,
Is there
as I say,
prison?
yeah, yeah, they are, but they're obviously overcrowded,
Okay.
heavily overcrowded. So you I don't want it to sound like it's lawless. Maybe I should rephrase that. But it's lawless to the point where you and I are having these conversations about how violent the crime is, how criminals are getting away with it, how it is essentially every man, woman, and child and community for themselves. Um, and yes, it is really that bad. Uh, the problem is that to try and show that to people, it's very difficult. There's no way that you can show it to them unless you visually create videos and be like, hey, look, dude, you're gonna die if you don't, try to do something a bit different other than coming home, drinking a brandy and watching the rugby, for example. So yeah, if you ever figure out that one day and how we can show people what's actually going on, let me know. But yeah, it's tough, dude. But we carry on. I mean, what else are we gonna do?
Okay, hey, before we go into this Oriana, the situation, the white enclave, and everyone says it's this racist city now that's doing quite well. But I have a comment here, and we can cut this out if you don't want it on here. But I met a South African girl in Florence, Italy, years ago. She was studying there. Her daddy was in like the diamond business or some,
Okay, yeah,
something. And but
yeah,
the comment I want to make is she looked like you, and like you don't, to me you don't look like a typical Aussie, British, Afrikaner. I don't even know what South Africans look like, the white South Africans, but she was more Asian looking. Is that fair to
okay,
say? Are you?
okay.
I'm
That's
curious
interesting.
where your background is from.
That's a first. That's a first. So, um, K9 looks like he's Asian. Oh man.
Like I
Okay,
said, she
so
was Asian, and I'm like, I didn't know there were South African Asian looking people. So
yeah, yeah. So no, K9's not Asian. K9 just hasn't had any sleep for the last like what 60 something hours because of community safety things. So yeah, I am tired. But adding to that, my family history has been put onto Twitter before. My family is all British. My family came here during the first Anglo-Boer War. Mine were some of the first soldiers to get off the ships at that time and take part in wartime activities. Um, During the First Boer War, we fought against the Boers that were here. And look, I'm not proud of it, but it is my family heritage and my family history. So they fought against the Boers, and
wait, what are you proud of? Was what it was, quote unquote, colonization, or what was what's so bad about the war?
well, if I take a look at what the Afrikaner in some aspects is trying to achieve today, I then compare it to what was done during the Boer Wars. For example, when they started burning farmhouses, I mean, the British started burning down farmhouses and putting women and children into concentration camps. I mean, those are technically the very first concentration camps before the Germans even did it to the Jews in World War II. So the British were putting Boer, Afrikaner Boer women and children into concentration camps to try and get the men to give up and stop fighting. And as a result, many of them starved to death, picked up diseases, died, etc. So, and obviously combine that with the amount of farmhouses that were burnt down to try and stop them from supplying the Boer militias or commandos with supplies and things like that. So, if I look at it today, no, I'm not proud of it. I respect and support the Afrikaner and the Boer as a whole. Not all of them, some of them, for what they're doing and what they're trying to achieve in this country. So that is essentially my family history. My family then somewhere
First of
along the
all,
lines.
my apologies. This war, I don't know anything about this war, but why were they fighting in the first place? Because we bring up the colonization thing. So I was just in Istanbul recently,
Okay.
and I was going through all the history of the Ottoman Empire, who crushed my beloved Roma, or the Byzantines, and they did a fantastic job of colonizing. Freaking almost the Balkans, North Africa, the Middle East. They made everyone go underneath the sword of Islam. They would enslave many European women and put them in the harem and make them convert. But then I also look at Rome. The dude colonized all of Europe, or Gaul, exterminated millions of them, enslaved the rest. And so we bash the colonizers of our past, but I think there's a little more to the story, and I'm curious to hear this Boer story about why are they even fighting in the first place.
So once again, there are many guys out there that can give you a much respected opinion and viewpoint on that. So I will be quick in my answer. Whilst being honest with you, bringing up Wikipedia a little bit in the background because I do know my history on it, but there was one or two things I would want to make sure that I point out correctly. So long story short, essentially the British tried to annex the Boers in the first Boer War. Then peace was made, and then the second Boer War came around, sort of the same-ish story with the Boers versus the British again. And it was just essentially the whole thing boils down to Britain wanting control over the southern tip of Africa, is what it boils down to. There's a lot more behind the scenes in politics and, a whole lot of other things that was going on during the time. Remember the British also fought the Zulu during that time frame, just before, just after, during, whatever. Essentially, that's what it boils down to. Fun fact, a lot of people don't know, but there was, technically speaking, actually three Boer Wars, if you take a look at it, because there was a Boer uprising as the third one towards the end, which was also cut down. So, yeah, that's the long and short of it. I would highly recommend your listeners to go and Google or look up the first, second Boer Wars and possibly the third Boer War. It's an interesting fact, though, that last one.
I think my overall point is the colonial age, the recent one, gets just hammered everywhere now. But I was in Peru in November to look into the Incas, right? And it was really odd. This little kingdom in Cusco in the mountains ended up conquering at their peak. They said their empire was full of 6 to 13 million people, and there was about 50,000 native Incas controlling all of these different cultures, right? And then the Spanish came in and they just took over. They took the crown from them, right? And it was that transition. But we don't talk about the Incas. We don't talk about the Aztecs. Why a lot of the natives in Mexico teamed up with the Spanish to destroy the Aztec Empire. It's fascinating how it's only the European colonialism that gets just hammered left and right. But I need to do more research on Great Britain in South Africa. So, anyways, continue.
So I would, to start off with, I mean, if you enjoy reading, for example, there's three books I would highly recommend you go and look into, written by a guy called Deneys Reitz, about the Boer Wars that he fought in and his life leading into the First World War, etc., and how everything turned out. He's got a fantastic turn of events. Even if you just read his Commando book, where he describes his fighting in the First Boer War, or if it was second, I can't recall, but it's a fantastic read, and I highly recommend everyone goes and takes a look at that.
But anyway, so we went through your family history. Fighters, they got sent down there. They did their job, and we were going into Oriana, correct?
Orania, yes.
So this is starting to blow up. If you want to, I'm gonna do the outside version, the clickbait version, what I see a lot of media talking about. But basically, it's a separatist, a white movement where there's no crime. They print their own money. Supposedly, no colored people are allowed, and it's the most racist thing ever. Right? This is what I'm seeing from the outside view. Then I dug more research, and I realized that the media likes to say whatever they want to say, and it's not necessarily the case. Now, you've been there. You
Right.
know the top dude. Can you explain to me this beautiful thing that is happening down in South Africa?
So at the end of this, I want to put you in touch with the guy who runs the place. I think he'd be fantastic for your show, and he would obviously be able to do this conversation that you need or want on that a lot more justice. But for someone who has been there, they gave us behind the scenes a look at a lot of stuff. And so, firstly, it's been labeled as a whites only town, but they are not denying anyone of color, as far as I understand it, the opportunity to live there. They are operating off of freedom of association, which I think everyone is entitled to. You should be allowed to associate with whoever you want to associate with. And to point out a few key features, they built everything themselves. They've had no support from the government, nothing. Every last brick that was put into that ground, into those houses, and into that infrastructure was all built and laid with their own hands, their own manpower, their own people built every last scrap of that. It was nothing but a desert, essentially, when they started construction. And it's still a desert around this. It's the Karoo, really. And it's just desert sand, technically, with shrubs and stuff around them on the Orange River. So I can tell you now that town, I'm not saying it's the safest town in South Africa. I'm sure that petty crime and things like that still take place there. But you're not hearing about people being murdered, slaughtered in cold blood, hijackings, home invasions, violent home invasions. You're not reading about or seeing cash in transit heists, kids getting kidnapped, raped, all these things that happen in the other cities. What you are seeing, though, is a townsfolk who, it's a town of about 3,000 people who are closely knit and brought together, and they're just trying to better their lives under a system that, as far as I'm concerned, works. And the system works because they're putting collective effort into maintaining, building, and securing not just their livelihoods, but their people as a whole. Remember, it's a cultural thing too. They're all Afrikaners. So it's a cultural thing for them as well. Uh, if you, if you ever come to South Africa, just let me know, and I'll happily take you down there. It's it's incredible what they're doing. We even had a chance to speak to the gentleman in charge of town planning, and if you actually sit down and look at it, what they're doing with regards to that, they're not just plucking roads and houses in the middle of a freaking desert. There's actual thought and processes and stuff behind it with a vision of where they want to be and how they want to end up in the long run. So it's a massive undertaking operation of which every single citizen has a buy-in into, because it's their efforts at the end of the day that lead to success, really. So as far as I'm concerned, that's all Orania is to me. It's a cultural hub for people who fit into that culture, who want to live there, and how would I say, actively thrive together with one goal. And that goal is just to essentially be left alone by everyone else, and not sounds crass, but to not die really at the end of the day, because that's life essentially for everyone else outside of it, where you got to constantly worry, am I going to be violently murdered one day just for my cell phone? So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the American frontier. I grew up in the Midwest, USA, and there was a lot of communities like that. Just leave me the hell alone. We're going to build our own little area here, not kill each other and Hakuna Matata. Let me ask you this, though, because is it like a commune? So I know they print their own money. Is there cult type aspects? So that's kind of on the flip end. I've heard, like, what is going on? Is it a little hippie, or is it like a small community? Everyone do their part, leave each other alone type atmosphere, join in on the Sunday Afrikaner chants, or what kind of feeling is it?
So firstly, apologies for the sound you might hear in the background. My neighbor's busy wind blowing his yard. But no, it's definitely not a cult, not the way I see it. They are just the people that has moved into the middle of the desert, and they're trying to build their own future in a safe environment that they have created themselves. That's the important part. They have created themselves. They've got no help from anyone. That's all their buy-in, their things. I mean, while we were there, we were, for example, shown a house that was built by an all-woman construction team. We were shown another property that was built by a single gentleman. I mean, this is a beautiful, beautiful house. I can try and let me just find that picture for you. I'll show it to you. It's probably going to be mirrored though because of the screen. But if you give me 1 second, I'll just show you to give you an idea of what the average house looks like there. Here we go. So
right there. Yeah, hold on. Okay,
let me
see.
do it. Let me do it like that, so it's easier for you to blur
Who
my
did
face
build that
later.
himself?
So he built this himself. I mean, take a
Wow.
look at that. Yes, I
Nice.
know that everyone else builds their own houses, yeah, and there and blah blah blah. But it's nothing. How would I put this? It's not. I don't want to say it's special, but I mean, for me, that is. I mean, that's your own labor, your own product, and you're putting the effort into it, and that is what they're doing
Middle
at
of the
the end of the
desert,
day.
no? Where are the supplies coming from? It
Yeah.
sounds like it's not easy to get those supplies if the cable
So
wires are gone.
so they import a lot. They do obviously bring stuff in. I wouldn't use the word import. They're still in South Africa. They still bring their own stuff in that they need, but they do make a lot of their own stuff as well. I can show you their flag as well if you want to see their flag. Um, so this is their flag. Yes, that's Lord Miles being an idiot in the background,
Is
but this
that
is this is the
Anaheim or what is that?
so this is their flag. That's the little man pulling up his sleeves to show that
Oh, he's working.
it's time to work, essentially. I've got a picture of their currency as well. Their currencies are more of a token. So it's not a currency that a country would give out. They're not a country.
This is the part that
Um,
worries me. Like, what kind of shenanigans are going on with the taxes and communism and commune? Like, is it legit on commune? Like, we don't. That's what I want to know.
so it's not a commune at the end of the day. So here's their currency. It's called the Aura, ORA.
That's
This
cool.
is right outside their bank. They made the notes themselves. If you look at the white part of the notes, it's the little man again pulling up his sleeves to
Okay.
to go and get some work. So their currency is tied to the South African rand 1 to 1. So a 10 rand note would be worth 10 aura, etc., etc. As far as I understand, they're still paying their taxes as they are required as South African citizens. They're still paying their taxes to the South African government. I may be mistaken on that. It might be another way of doing it where there's other policies and stuff involved. So don't quote me on that one. I could be a bit mistaken there, but yeah, it's not a cult. We spent the night there. We slept over, and we had a full tour during the entire day. And we were able to mingle with countless citizens of their little town and engage openly with them. Um, it's just the dumbest, simplest thing you can say is that it's just a bunch of people that are culturally connected that have moved into the middle of the desert in order to do their own thing at the end of the day.
In other words, it sounds like a cult, but I'm going to see it firsthand.
I
And so far, it
I
sounds
hear
beautiful.
you. Yeah, yeah, I hear you on that. I
But
hear you. Now
but
that I've
that's it,
said
though.
that, I think to myself, "Oh, you idiot!"
Yeah.
but
But no,
but
that dude. Look, I've checked out his Twitter. I think you tagged him with me. He seems legit, dude, and what they're doing to me is beautiful. But I was asking, do they pay like local taxes? So, or are they earning money through the work they do there, or is it all going to the top guy?
no, no, their salaries are still their salaries. Their bank accounts are still their bank accounts. They have a bank there that deals with their if you want to call it their currency. It's a token, but we'll call it a currency. So they can access it via, or they can use the bank to do whatever they want, sort of on that spectrum. So what I want to do though, please, I'm going to put you in touch with, his name is Joost Strydom. I'm going to put you in touch with him on Twitter
Yeah.
where he can give you a much better breakdown. I mean, my version of events is honestly quite pathetic compared to what he can tell you what's going down there. But having experienced it firsthand, I can assure anyone who asks, it's definitely, no matter how I've described it, it's definitely not a cult. We're not going to drink the Kool-Aid at the end of this episode. That's for damn sure.
Okay, cool. Hey, I know I said about an hour, but how much time you got? 20 minutes ish. I got a couple
I
more
can
things.
give you as much time as you need. I
Beautiful.
have some time today.
I appreciate the conversation. I don't want to stop you from saving your citizens and your neighborhood, but uh, I really need to know this though. So, as a foreigner who wants to come, which most likely will after the European summer, where are you sending me? Okay. Obviously, I like the beach, so probably the Cape Town. I saw this other South African city, or maybe it was a little north of you. It was a German village on the sea, a colonial village. It looked unfreaking real. So I assume it's not in South Africa, but give me the top destinations here. Obviously, I'm going to see you and I'm going to go to this Oriana place, but that I'll have a good time. You know, I don't have to watch my back all the time. I'm used to danger, so it's not that big of a deal. There's pretty woman, you know, good vibes, and then kind of let me know how much money am I spending to, you know, live a solid life as a tourist in South Africa.
So, look, once you convert your currency to South African rands, in most cases, the tourist is a lot better off. You have a lot more expenditure that you can make. Um, Look, a lot of people come here. They will go to Cape Town, Stellenbosch, Betty's Bay, those sort of areas, Struisbaai. Sometimes they go further north to like Saldanha, St. Helena, those sort of areas. So if you're thinking of like Cape Town, that's generally where people will go. Um, Not all those areas are in Cape Town, but I mean that is the Western Cape-ish sort of. Sometimes they'll even go as far as I know tourists who've come here to go to places like Piketberg and stuff like that, or the wine farms and stuff around Ceres and those sort of places. So or Wellington and Stellenbosch and that sort of thing. So if you come here, you'll probably spend some time in Cape Town. Be honest with you. When you leave Cape Town, there's a lot of scenic routes. So a lot of people take that scenic route and they go along the coast, sort of heading east, almost towards Port Elizabeth, and then like coming back. That's sort of what people do in Cape Town. If you come up to Johannesburg, there are quite a few things you can do here as well. A lot of people come here to, for example, go to the cradle of humankind, where they found some of the oldest Homo sapien or otherwise skeletons, sort of in caves and a bunch of things that side. Uh, I can't unfortunately give you the pretty tourist look. I mean, security and stuff like that is sort of my thing. So if you spend time with me, we'll end up going into, for example, Johannesburg CBD. We'll take you to the Zama Zama gold mines where they're digging up gold illicitly. We'll
Wait, time out. So you can go to the blood diamond gold stuff and not get in trouble, or what? Why are you allowed to go there?
I know the right people. So if someone like yourself were to go there, yeah, I don't see you walking out.
Really, like
Um,
legitly. So let's say
yeah,
I came into the country. I said, I'm just gonna go to the gold mine, see what happens. Even with my smart mouth and my tongue, I won't get out of there alive.
unless you pay them a lot of money.
Like what? How much money are
Yeah,
you talking? Like these
you're
these people are big
talking
dogs, right? This is our
in
question I want to ask
the
you. Is the mafia is no organized crime running the country? Then how is if the
there's a lot
government's not
of organized crime. There's organized crime in almost everything. There's organized crime when it comes to cable theft, when it comes to the Zama Zamas, when it comes to construction, there's construction mafias. There are vehicle hijacking
why do
mafias.
they keep the places safe? There's a lot of places like Italy where the
No,
mafia keeps it safe.
no, no. There's even, South Africa's struggling with water, drinking water. There's even water tanker mafias who are involved in that sort of thing. So
Let me ask
yeah,
you,
like I
my
said,
friend,
lawless.
why aren't they keeping it safe? There's a lot of places, even Brazil, a lot of the favelas. The favelas is safe. If you, the favela is safe, they do all their dirty work outside of it. If you know people in the favela, the best time of your life. Okay, so why doesn't any of these mafia bosses step up, making all this money and clean the streets?
It's a different land, dude. It's a different land,
Lawless,
different people.
really lawless.
It is lawless. It honestly is. Yeah. So on my side of things, it would just be exposure to copper cable theft, Zamas, cash and transit heists, violent home invasions, that side of thing. It's not proud of it. I am not proud of it, but it is what I'm involved in at the end of the day in terms of not partaking in those activities, but trying to stop them, essentially.
Quickly here, cost of living. What's like the average income, South African? Are you living good off a couple $1,000s a month? Tell me kind of that situation with pricing.
I think those obviously who earn are doing okay. I think the average South African can do okay with about 15,000 Rand a month. Average house rental, depending on where you live, would probably be between 8 and 10,000 for the smaller units. Bigger houses, 20, 30K a month. Um, Average South African, like I say, they said recently, I think the average South African's taking home between 15 and 20,000 Rand a month. I can't recall exactly.
Okay, I just did the math.
And
So 15,000 South African rand is 825 US dollars, and that's a solid life. Okay.
yeah, you can. I'm not saying you're going to party every night, but you can survive off of that sort of.
You're
Granted,
talking about tourists. I'm
if
talking about a local here. If a local's making 15,000 rand a month, they're having a decent life.
yeah, they can survive off of that. If you want a really decent life, you're talking like 30,000 Rand take home salary
1,600. Okay.
monthly. Yeah, it is. Look, I used to think South Africa was really expensive to live in until Miles came over and he started looking at everything. And I shit you not, the guy was like, "Oh, that's cheap, that's cheap, that's cheap. Let's just buy that. That's cheap." And I was like, "What the fuck?" It's like to me, it's like, man, that's cash dollar, dude. That's money, bro. And yeah, it was quite the eye opener to hear. I mean, he had his Aussie cameraman here too, and even he was like, "Oh, that's cheap in South Africa. That's cheap. That's cheap." And I was like, "Okay, fuck, all right, cool."
Have you traveled outside of South Africa?
Yeah, to other parts of Africa, yes, yes, I have.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, because I mean, 800, a month is you're talking. I mean, that's Brazilian wages basically. So that would make sense that Miles is feeling that way. Cape Town, the richest neighborhoods. What kind of money are we talking there? Are these people, modern day
Millions,
colonial overlords?
millions. There are places in Cape Town where there are multi millionaires,
Yeah.
especially the properties in the waterfront area and things like that. Absolute multi millionaires. But
So
then
that area is
also just
completely safe, correct?
no,
You don't
no.
have
So
security, armed guards everywhere, no?
yeah, they do. But violent crime still happens in Cape Town. It's not the land of milk and honey where you just pull in there and okay, cool, like I'm gonna
Oh
be
no, I'm
okay
talking
now.
the rich areas. I'm talking where those big houses are.
Oh no, crime still happens there.
Really?
But remember, they're paying a fortune for that, call it privilege, of not having to worry about crime within a very small area. And that very small area is usually like their street. They'll boom off the street and have a security guard there, and maybe they'll have, if they pay extra, they'll have a security guard who roams up and down the road. And some of the houses have security guards posted outside the gate and things like that, and they're paying a premium uh, for that privilege. But it's by no means ending crime or violent crime because it still happens in the wealthy Cape Town suburbs and neighborhoods.
But very few crime.
I would say less. Yeah, I would. To be fair, I would say it obviously happens less because there's more visible policing on the ground with regards to security guards and things like that.
Okay, this is pretty much last topic here, and we kind of discussed it beforehand. And obviously, I think since Elon got Twitter, you see it a lot more on this side of social media with the racism and so forth. And the very hot topic is South Africa, right? And I'm a person who believes if you just spout the whole race stuff, that your brain is not fully developed and you don't look at nuances and so forth, or you're not really well traveled, right? But a common theme about South Africa is a lot of racism and black versus white. I'm curious to hear what you say to combat that and your thoughts on the perspective outsiders have of the situation going on there.
So, look, this is coming from someone who has traveled South Africa quite extensively, and I have gone into some of the most dangerous areas of this country, especially up in Johannesburg, some of the most dangerous townships. Um, etc., and blah blah blah. And obviously, it's all black people because the townships tend to be 90% the black population, the poor black population who are living in them. And in those instances, not once have I been worried because of the color of my skin, if that helps answer your question. I have been worried to myself, think to myself, okay, I've got to keep an eye for my team members and myself because they do open fire on first responders and things like that. That happens no matter where you go, though, just by the way. They do open fire on first responders. So on a safety level with that regard, I have been concerned for this, my safety or the safety of my teammates, but not once has it been due to color, if I can put that out there. I know a lot of my listeners and stuff are going to hear this and be like, oh, yeah, call it for what it is, blah, 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 blah. But they must understand they don't live here. They're not experiencing what I'm experiencing on a daily basis. I patrol with black patrollers. I have those same black patrollers coming to my house, my property, to have coffee, share a meal, have a braai, and I'm doing the same with them. And not once have I thought to myself, I'm gonna get stabbed in my property because the guy's black. I mean, it's fucking ridiculous. At the end of the day. But with that being said, it's fair to say that yes, there are, in some cases, and it is increasing, there are racial tensions in South Africa. So I'm not saying that there's nothing there, but I'm saying that the other, I think, hmm. So maybe a nice way to try and answer that would be to say that people must understand that there's a lot of people out there who want nothing but death and chaos. They want to see things go bad so they can be proven right. And they want nothing more than the blacks to take out their pangas and go full Hotel Rwanda on the entire white South African population in this country. I could tell you right now, that will never happen. It may happen in very small enclaves, very small portions of the country. One day it may happen if racial tensions increase to that point, but you will never see it on a nationwide spectrum in this country. Um, Granted, things stay the way they are. Please, I'm not saying that in the future, if things change, it's going to be different. But for example, and I know people are going to want the answer to this, don't shoot me for this, by the way, but a lot of people look at South Africa and they go, especially online, and they like to throw the word white genocide around. Um, then you get someone like myself who, once again, I respond to incidences of crime, black, white, Indian, colored, doesn't matter, with black patrollers and things like that. I can tell you now, and I will answer this for myself and for your listeners. I hope it doesn't affect your listenership. Um, but I can tell people right now, if anyone wants to know, I am offering anyone who wants to come to South Africa, and if you want to see white genocide, please come to South Africa, and I'll show you that there is, as far as I'm concerned, no incidences of white genocide within reason. So when I say that, keep in mind that keep in mind that a lot of the farm attacks are racially motivated. They are racially motivated. Some farmers, a lot of them are being murdered brutally, violently slaughtered, actually, because they're white. But with that being said, reason dictates we need to keep a level head and look at the situation as a whole. My account is very well known, for example, for saying stupid things along the line. You know, we're all going to die, it's chaos, blah, 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 blah. It's just me screwing around. I know it's not going to happen. But no one's being pulled out of their cars yet, for example. There are not roadblocks on the side of the road where white people are being stopped and instantly pungered to death. White people are not being pulled out of their cars and being murdered because they're white. Things like that. Yes, there are hate crimes. There's a lot of hate crimes due to race. But in terms of the greater scheme of things with regards to a large-scale white genocide, and that's the correct terminology, large-scale white genocide, there's nothing. So again, anyone who thinks that there's a white genocide in South Africa, if you can afford the trip, come here. I will ensure your safety, and I will take you to wherever the hell you want to go, free of charge. free of charge. And I will show you that there is no large
Free of
scale.
charge. You're gonna be my taxi
Yeah,
all over South Africa. Don't take that back.
it's okay. You're going to pay for the fuel, buddy. Don't you worry. Um,
And
there's
the drinks.
no,
Lots of drinks.
yeah, and the drinks. And really, I don't want people to look at this and go, "Okay, now he's being soft and he's cucking to the black race and all these weird shit that I see on
No, no,
Twitter."
no. Look, so let me hop in here. The X is extreme, okay? And I've gone to enough places to not believe any
Yeah,
one side and get lost in the media sauce, right? I'm not
I
looking for
respect
you to,
that.
I'm not
I
looking
respect that.
I'm not looking for you to say there's a white genocide going on. But the fact that you said in certain means, or I forgot the phrase you said about like the farmers, and then we see those viral videos about politicians saying some crazy stuff.
Yeah,
I just want the facts. What is happening with the race relationships there? It's never one side or the other. So that's
yeah,
what I'm looking for.
100%. So those politicians are jumping up and down on stage and encouraging their followers to do call it white genocide because they're singing "Kill the Boer," and then you've got them on the other spectrum, completely different politicians saying that kill the white man, kill his children, and whatever. These are coming from black people. You look at that
See,
and you
Abel,
go,
that's a little extreme, like that
and that
saying
is
that as a
happening.
politician is wild. And I can see kill the boar as in like a revolution thing, take the chains off type of attitude. But you start going down that road, I mean, that's extreme to me.
So they might be saying that, but it's important to understand that a lot of their followers are translating that literally. And there has been instances of violent farm murders, actual slaughters, where people have been cut down like sheep. And they've written with their dying blood, their attackers have written on the wall, kill the Boer.
Okay, so you tell me this though.
So,
So in any developed country, if that happened, people would be saying, "Oh, okay, this is very big hate crime." And second of all, we need to watch out before anything more serious happens. No, I mean, you told me, you're from South Africa, you visit some African places, but this is a little extreme. Would you not admit that?
it absolutely is. But you'll find that the population will downplay it as just a song. Uh, it's absolutely not. And the problem is that that song affects all white people as far as I'm concerned. There's a few institutions out there and initiatives and whatever, they'll be upset with me because they're going to say, but it's the Afrikaner and blah, blah, blah. And I mean, they'll do that because they need the public funding and donations and things. And that's fine. I understand that. But we're seeing white people attacked because of that song as well. Not I'm not saying en masse. I'm saying isolated incidences here and there. Again, they're not isolated to a point where it happens and you're like, oh wow, that's wild. It is happening often enough where I don't want to say you get used to it, but you see it and you're like, oh, it's another one, for example. So it is happening quite a bit. Um, yeah.
And then you push back, obviously, because lots of great natives, Boers that you work with that keep the neighborhood straight. So it's not one side be all. I think that's the main point for sure. Crazy, man, crazy. Yeah, and definitely this encouraged me to come down there, though, especially if I got a connection like you. Those one trips, the gold mines would be a freaking pleasure. I would love to do that. Um, what kind of final words do you have to say? Obviously, we put your Twitter here. Living in such a interesting situation in life, your kind of messages to the people out there.
Look, at the end of the day, I think that when we started this conversation, um, that saying that we had earlier where the guy with the copper cable theft and the telecom lines, etc. And he said to the reporter, imagine in 10, 15 years, we won't have this conversation because it won't be there. What I can say to people now is if you don't get involved, no matter where you are in the world, as a person, a member of your community, if you don't get involved I don't want to do the gay thing and say make a change or difference, but if you don't get involved to put things in the path that you want your children and stuff to grow up in, you, my friend, are royally fucked at the end of the day. So you got to get involved. You got to do your bit. And I promise you, nothing that you do is too small. Everyone's got to start somewhere. And yeah, but to you, my friend, if you ever want to come down to South Africa, I promise you that offer it's a standing offer. You can come down. You just let me know a little bit in advance so we can arrange everything, even if it's just for 3 or 4 nights. And all I can do is show you the worst of the worst. Unfortunately, that's just how it is because of the industries I'm involved in. But I can give you a feel for things of where countries are heading if they don't get involved. That's for sure.
No, I like that kind of tourism too. Obviously, I'll spend a lot of time in Cape Town on the beaches. Hakuna Matata. You don't need to say where you're from exactly, but are you close to Cape Town?
No, 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 no. I'm in Johannesburg, miles away from beautiful Cape
Oh, okay.
Town.
So I got to fly in there, probably do all the crazy stuff, then go relax in the south. Okay.
Yeah, 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 absolutely.
Um, awesome. Well, hey, I appreciate it a lot. I admire you doing what you're doing. Putting the word out there, but doing it in a good way. Protecting the community. My opinions on a lot of this stuff in America is in nowhere near the shape South Africa is. I do believe things are going a little downhill, not as much as the doomers say, but I'm the type of person that's going to live my life. I'm going to be happy, and
Right,
I'll say what I
right.
can from over here because like I said, what they did to the January 6 people with the whole storming the Capitol and that
Yeah.
that put a real big disgust in my mouth. But you, my friend, you're a true warrior, and I respect it a lot. It was great to meet you. I hope you had a beautiful time. And one of these days, I can't wait for the people to see your face. You need a politician. You're going to be the one that saves South Africa.
What I will say that I know for a fact one day I will be doxxed. There's no doubt about it. I've made no efforts to hide my identity. To be honest with you, my name is out there. People have my cell phone number, the whole 9 yards. Um, but what I will say is, the day I am doxxed is the day that Twitter will get the full picture, because then I will have free reign as to what I record and what I show. Because right now I'm not recording because of that one instance. So yeah, that's all I'm saying is I've got no issues. Eventually I will get doxxed. It is what it is.
Well, the good part is too, like your buddy Lord Miles is now that you have a bigger following and it keeps going, people will support you too. So you're not going to be reliant on getting canceled and all these different things. As long as
Right.
Elon doesn't mess around and start doing crazy stuff on the socials like every other platform.
Yeah, yeah.
So
He's doing a great job so far. Let's just hope he keeps doing it.
awesome! All right, everyone, make sure you check out K9 Reaper on the Twitter. It's a very interesting account and live bold. Ciao, ciao.